In our community, persistent homelessness is among the most difficult life situations to cope with. Typically, it means having lived for at least a year on the streets, but it's often longer. Greater likelihoods of mental illness, addictions, and declining health are all outcomes of years on the street. The person begins to give up on life in conventional housing. The streets are now home.
When you've dealt with persistent homelessness, finding a place to live is so difficult because, what's your contact number? You know, who's your references? You don't want to go to your family. You're ashamed of your situation, so you don't have any references. You've probably fallen into some addiction issues. You've probably lost some apartments. And a lot of times you just don't even want to look anymore. You just feel there's no sense even looking.
Persistent homelessness also means a deep level of disconnection from service, often because of the complexity of those services or because of the way they feel treated by businesses, landlords, or social services. There is a deep level of resentment that the broader community no longer is willing to go the extra mile to understand or truly help.
You know, some of the people I get to walk with, they say, you know, I go to the same office every month and they look at me like I'm not human, and I get these things in the mail that say, you know, what I have to do, but I don't understand the wording in them. So people run against these barriers that maybe some of us else in the community might not find as barriers, but for a lot of these people, they're very difficult things to navigate, and you can imagine after beating your head against something over and over again, that they give up. I think I, in a lot of ways, would as well. So.
But I was seriously at the end of my rope. Like, I'm fed up with the government, and I didn't want to live no more. If they weren't going to help me out and give me at least a pension for all the shit I've had to go through with all the jobs that I've had over the years, I would have ended it. I would have.
Going from having everything and then losing everything and going into shelters and being on welfare and disability, the biggest thing is a lot of people don't want to rent to people that are on welfare or disability. I find that some landlords I've had said to me, you know what, it all looks nice on paper, but then when it comes to it, it's like, I'm sorry, but someone else took it. And I felt very bad and upset, and I'm going, what did I do? Did I say something or did I do something? It made me feel so upset and self-conscious that I didn't want to continue.
The more rules that we put in place saying that you have to have this sort of temperament or you have to be clean, like you have to bathe or you have to be clean and you can't be using anything, any sort of substance. Like any sort of rule like that is going to drive more people away.
Typically, a person's experience of persistent homelessness begins by trying to hold on to the only affordable housing available. But because the person might be facing challenges in their own life, the rundown and chaotic conditions of that housing often creates a more stressful situation than if they lived on the streets.
And I think for a lot of people, a choice to live on the street is made because it's better than any other option that they have.
Walking into your living room and finding, holes in the walls and, furniture that somebody's urinated on, and things don't get replaced as they get used. And so, you struggle to accumulate a little bit of food and it's gone. It's very hard just to relax, and it's hard to sleep at night. All these things sort of cumulatively turn into a really stressful situation.
A person becomes persistently homeless after a lengthy period of trying to make housing work for themselves. They begin to believe that safe, stable housing just isn't an option for them. As a result, they continue cycling in and out of shelters, prisons, or hospitals, simply because there's nowhere else for them to go.
We know that some folks have begun to normalize the streets as home, and their skills are more oriented to survival on the streets than they are to being in housing, and that perhaps they've lost the hope for housing.
Given a choice between most of the low-income housing that I've seen or been involved with and being on the streets, I'd rather be on the streets. It's the lesser of two evils.
Persistent homelessness isn't just costly for the person. There's an incredible cost of doing nothing over doing something to end persistent homelessness. In the absence of real flexible housing, many rely heavily on costly emergency services, like ambulance and hospitals. A local study found that it's 10 times more expensive to leave these men and women in a homeless situation than it is to create safe, stable housing.
People experiencing persistent homelessness on a per diem basis cost 10 times more. You know, it's that 10% of folks use up 90% of the resources, and we're looking at how we can maximize resources and best serve people.
Well, most of them don't have any primary health care contact that they can use, so ambulance has typically been the sort of the final level of the social safety net. If they don't have a family doctor, if they don't have anyone else to call, it's easy just to call 911. And we have people that have called us. I have one client that is in our registry 500 times. So we've carried that fella 500 times in the last couple of years. And we found that if those people have a contact number to call, somebody that's dealing with them on a regular basis, they will call that person instead of calling us. And that's really what we need. We need somebody that'll be able to assess that person's needs, decide whether they do need an ambulance or they can be driven to the emergency department, or it's something else. They just need somebody to talk to and get them through, you know, a time when they just need some help. We found that cuts down our call volume dramatically.
So we needed a different approach. Step Home is an umbrella of 7 programs at 8 sites, working together to end the cycle of persistent homelessness in our region. Step Home takes the position that every person experiencing persistent homelessness who wants housing has a right to a safe, stable place to live. Step Home's housing-first approach means rejecting ideas like a person is too hard to house or non-compliant. The real issue is that we have not yet created the right type of housing or find the right ways of delivering service. Step Home is working to do just that.
And we definitely operate on a mentality that because you are another human being, you deserve a good home, you deserve a place in this community. And you don't have to work to earn those things, you don't have to get clean or get this issue under wraps or this. You deserve these things because you're a human, because you're part of this community. And so they've had services thrown at them their entire life, and they've said, if you want to get better, come here and do this. And it's amazing the difference when we kind of change our approach and we say, hey, we care about your life. What do you see as where you want to go? And if that's where you want to go, then how can we walk alongside you in that?
For someone who's persistently homeless, barriers to housing, like addiction and physical and mental illness, are best addressed once a person has a safe, stable home. These underlying and heavy issues are too difficult to work through while also struggling to find a safe place to sleep. And housing is the best way to give a person that stability.
In the rooming house situation, again, dealing with everybody around you and the stress, the elevated stress levels, would definitely contribute to wanting to drink more. It was a great way of just sort of escaping from that, of lowering my anxiety. Oh, the difference is incredible. It's made the world a difference to my attitudes. Becoming, again, more goal-oriented, the way I used to be at one point. I'm able to focus on that and look at moving forward in my life and getting things back together.
When a person has been persistently homeless for many years, the idea of once again having a safe place to live is a very fragile one. But the process of searching for housing often isn't the first step. Applying for social services can be difficult. A person needs to wait while they apply for ID. They may need to find a doctor if they have to apply for disability benefits, a process that can last up to a year while they get tested and wait for results. Without housing, these are overwhelming barriers that often prevent a person from even considering a housing again.
If all conventional sources of funding have been exhausted, and yet there's an opportunity to move a person or transition a person into a safer or more stable housing arrangement, then we're going to spend the money to make that happen with the Flex Fund. We've found it doesn't usually take that much money. We don't have a huge budget, but just a couple $100 here and there can be all it takes to move a person past an obstacle to get to a point where they actually have an opportunity to make a change.
Outreach workers also work to maintain an open and ongoing relationship with the landlord, to ensure it continues to work for both landlord and tenants.
I think the one thing is the step home worker has always been there. And, you know, initially you hear a lot of promises of like, oh yeah, we'll be there, we'll support you, and a lot of times it just doesn't work out that way. I find in my particular case, I can say the step home worker was there to support us, and especially through some of the difficult challenges we've had, and even outside of the program, he's always been very supportive.
These guys step up to the plate. When they say something, they do it. Once they get a reply, they're on the phone to you or texting you, whatever way they got to get in contact with you, period.
But stable housing itself is not enough. Regardless of the reasons why housing hasn't worked in the past, ongoing and intensive support makes the difference between losing and keeping housing. Outreach workers in the Step Home program continue to walk with a person for a year or more after they find housing. And it's vital that relationship with the outreach worker is one of openness, honesty, and a deep level of mutual respect.
Relationships are the foundation of housing somebody. When they're struggling through these heavy issues in their life, it's important for somebody to be open and honest and real and trusting with them, and to allow them to lead the relationship because it's their life.
A big part of my job is just, you know, offering to really kind of walk alongside them and to identify what kind of supports they might find helpful in that. You know, whether that's supports for an addiction, whether that's you know, a counselor to talk to, whether that's just sitting and having a coffee with me. We'll go talk to landlords together, you know, and as they have questions through the whole thing, we'll kind of talk through all that.
Allowing that relationship to be equalized a little bit, where you don't have one authoritative figure and one needy figure. You've got that sort of equality in the relationship, I think, is a huge, huge dynamic. And it goes to providing that the person that is needing help with dignity, with some, which breeds self-respect and all these other great things that help people get on with their lives. So
the combination of flexibility and genuine relationship is having a real impact. Step Home has helped 80 people over the last 2 years gain access to stable housing, often after 5 or 10 years of persistent homelessness. But these impacts go well beyond simple housing.
You feel like you're a part of something, like you're not set aside, you're not just another number, you are a whole of something, and they actually do care. And they prove it by going above and beyond.
You know, he doesn't treat me as a street person. He treats me as a true human being.
And that works, right? Like that.
Oh, it makes the whole difference. It makes me feel like a true person. Like, he doesn't look at me, I'm missing a leg or whatever. He looks at me as a human being, period.
The work that Step Home is doing continues to evolve. As a person regains stability in their life, it's natural that they begin to explore and expand out into other areas of our community. Re-establishing contact with family, creating community groups, or beginning to look for work again are all examples of where the person is directing this program.
We're now talking about, now that people are gaining some stabilization in their life and are sensing that there is some support, that the community does care about them. The problem is now is how do a person then move into the community in a more integrated manner. So we're calling that community integration. And that is a real a difficult place to go, because that now demands not that we provide services and support to people, but that the community now opens itself up to accepting and welcoming people. And my hope is that this program is helping to allow people to understand that people are just people, regardless of their problems or the depth of the issues or the severity of some of the behaviors that might be exhibited, that underneath that lies a person who's saying, who cares about me? And that's a universal human cry. Our call is to say, how will you accept all of us and celebrate what that humanness is in all of us?